Good morning everyone, my name is Ritesh and today I'll discuss current affairs issue which happened actually last week or even trending right now. So today we'll discuss the Kasturirangan committee, right, which is related to the Western Ghat and the state of Karnataka actually. So what happened was state of Karnataka has actually opposed the committee report, and so we'll discuss the whole report recommendations and also what state governments are argumenting over the whole issue, right? So as a brief introduction, I will say in this topic we'll discuss the Kasturirangan committee report, that is why it was in news, why you have read so much things related to this committee. Then we will discuss the key terms related to this committee, right? We will discuss the eco-sensitive areas, then the report recommendations, what are the recommendations of the report. Then we will discuss the certain map, because if a geographical topic comes in your syllabus, then you have to refer certain map of that topic, right? So you'll take all the right answers if there's a question related to the map or even the states or dams, rivers related things, right? Then we'll discuss the opposition of Karnataka's government, right? Why state government has opposed this whole committee report? What are the main issue behind the whole report, right? And that's it. It's a very small topic in which you only have to remember the report recommendations and the arguments of the state. That's it. So let us start with the topic. So first let's discuss why this committee report was in news. So recently the government of Karnataka has informed the center government that the state is opposed to the Kasturirangan committee report on Western Ghats. So what happened was Kasturirangan committee is related to the Western Ghats, right? So the report has recommended certain things related to Western Ghats, that how you will have to discuss the whole issue of Western Ghats and how you will designate these Western Ghats as certain prospects, right? And then what happened is that state of Karnataka has opposed this move because there are some issues related to this report that state government has finalized. So state government has officially basically opposed this whole committee report, right? So the Kasturirangan committee report has proposed 37% of the total area of Western Ghats to be declared as eco-sensitive areas. Now listen to this very carefully, that this report recommended that 37% of the total area of Western Ghats, that is the whole Western Ghats, in which 37% of the Western Ghats to be referred as eco-sensitive areas, right? The gist of this report is this, that the 37% of the Western Ghats to be referred as sensitive area. Now there are certain implications if you refer something as, or designate or declare Western Ghats as eco-sensitive areas. There are certain regulations with respect to this whole issue, right? So the Karnataka government is of the opinion that declaring Western Ghats as economic sensitive areas would adversely affect the livelihood of people in the region. Obviously there are certain peoples involved in the Western Ghats. Now there are certain peoples that are living in those Ghats. Now what happened is, if you designate a place or certain ghat as an economic sensitive areas, you will have to do some regulations, some basic regulations with respect to the areas. You have the government will finalize some things that you don't have to do certain aspects of those things in those areas specifically, right? So the people living in those areas will adversely affected by this issue, right? So that's why it was in news. Now let's discuss the eco-sensitive areas. What is eco-sensitive areas, right? Because this report has said that 37% of the ghats to be declared as eco-sensitive areas. So you must understand what are the eco-sensitive areas, or what is the basic definition of the eco-sensitive areas, right? So eco-sensitive areas are located within 10 kilometers around protected areas, national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. Now see, there are so many things. You must understand wildlife sanctuaries, national park, biosphere reserves. There are these things that are related to environment and wildlife, right? Now, these areas are already protected. Now, eco-sensitive areas are actually located within 10 kilometers around these protected areas, right? There is, like, if there is this is a national park, just refer to the slide. If this is a national park, the 10-kilometer areas around this whole area is to be referred as eco-sensitive areas, right? Now, these areas are notified by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change under the Environmental Protection Act 1986. Now let's see, you understand that these are eco-sensitive areas. Now you have to understand that these areas are to be notified by which authority, right? Because this is very important for your examination point of view, right? So eco-sensitive areas are notified by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Under which act? It is Environmental Protection Act 1986, right? Now the basic aim to designate a place as an eco-sensitive area is to regulate certain activities around these protected areas like national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, so as to what? So what happened? So as to minimize the negative impact of such activities. Now there are certain activities that happen in and around these protected areas. Now if there is some activities that involve negative impacts on those areas, then by declaring eco-sensitive areas to that particular area, what happen is you minimize the negative impact of those activities, right? So that's why government or even the ministry notify a certain area as eco-sensitive area. So as to so again the main gist is to minimize the negative impacts of activities that happen in and around the protected areas. That's it. Now let's discuss the report recommendations. Now this Kasturirangan report committee comes, right, and this committee recommended certain prospects which became an issue for the state of government. Now you have to understand what are the recommendations. They don't only they don't only declare 37% of the area of the Western Ghats as eco-sensitive areas, but also says some other important things too. Now these are factual things, or these are like story-like things that you will notice these things in your comprehension when you attempt a CLAT paper, right? So the Kasturirangan committee report proposes roughly 60,000 square kilometers to be declared as eco-sensitive areas. So this is a figure, a factual figure. You have to remember if a question comes with related to this, that how much area has to be declared as eco-sensitive areas according to Kasturirangan report committee, right? So it is roughly around 60,000 square kilometers, right? Next is the boundaries of the sites. In most cases, boundaries of the legally demarcated national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, tiger reserve. Again, what this point says is that the boundaries of the eco-sensitive areas isn't aligned with the boundaries of the protected areas. Just like, for example, I've said that so this is a national park, right, and these are the protected eco-sensitive areas, that is 10 kilometer in and around the national park, right? Now this boundary is aligned with this, because eco-sensitive areas first boundary is this and second boundary is the boundary of the national park itself or the protected area itself. So the boundary is in aligned with this thing too. So the boundary of the national park is, or the protected area is common with the eco-sensitive areas. Yes. Now third point is the report recommended a blanket ban on mining, quarrying, setting up of red category industries and thermal power projects. Now what the committee says is that you have to ban some activities which negatively impact the sites of these protected areas, like mining and quarrying, or even thermal power projects, or the red category power projects or industries are the industries that hamper the protected areas by polluting them, or even like if you do so much mining activities in around those areas, it eventually impact the national protected areas too. So the report says that there must be a blanket ban on mining or even quarrying or setting up some category of industries that actually hamper the protected areas, right? Now, the report also stated that impact of infrastructural projects on forest and wildlife should be studied before permission is given for. Now, again, like the report recommended that there is a complete or a blanket ban on these activities, right? Now, if a certain activity is to be passed by the government, there must be some impact assessment of those projects. Like if you consider mining project, like there is a term called environment impact assessment, right? So before setting up these industries, you have to submit a report called EIA report, in which you have to mention all those things, that what are the implications of this project. If we have to finalize this project in a certain area, then what are the implications of this project, what are the livelihoods that get affected from this project. So there's an impact assessment of this whole project or whole setting up industry, right? So the report stated that there must be a impact assessment of these projects before even setting up these industries, right? Next is, it also stated that the UNESCO heritage tag is an opportunity to build global and domestic recognition of the enormous natural wealth that exists in Western Ghats. Now it says that if a tag is to be given to some area, then first what happened is that there's an international recognition of that area, right? If a UNESCO heritage tag is attached to a particular area, then all over the globally you know that this is a UNESCO heritage site. It means it has a certain importance globally, right? So by giving that kind of tag, you get an enormous kind of recognition by giving just such a tag, right? So giving that tag is an opportunity actually to build global recognition of the wealth that has been situated in those areas, right? So these are basically report recommendations. Now next one is, just look at the map of this Western Ghat, right? Just refer to this map. This is Gujarat. So this is basically the boundary, right? So this is basically the outline of Western Ghat. That's it. Gujarat, Maharashtra, Mumbai, Goa, Karnataka, Thiruvananthapuram. So these are the states that are involved in this Western Ghat whole process. So if a geographical topic comes in your paper or editorial, you have to refer to the map itself, right? So these are the states that gets affected from these things, right? So just refer to this map and just read carefully of all those things. So map actually helps you to build certain points, or even you remember these things if you saw them actually, right? So just look at the map itself and notice what are the states, what are the rivers, what are the dams that are being situated in these areas, right? There must be some national park, wildlife sanctuaries. So locate these things on your map. Now let's discuss the last topic, which is the opposition of Karnataka government. Now again, you realize that this is the committee report and the recommendations of that report. Now you have to understand why state government is opposing this move of this committee, right? So first point is that the state government believes that implementation of this the report will halt the developmental activities in the region, right? So if you declare certain area as an eco-sensitive area, what happened is you can't do certain activities in those areas, and there are so many peoples that are living in those areas, right? And they will get adversely affected by just declaring that area as eco-sensitive areas, right? So first thing what happened is that developmental projects cannot be done in those areas, right? First, and the state government is hampered actually by these kind of reports. Next is, the report has been prepared based on just satellite images, but the ground reality is different, obviously. Now the report only relies on the satellite images of the Western Ghats, but the ground reality is different. It means that the ground reality is there are so many peoples that are living in those areas, in the Western Ghats, right? And by just declaring them eco-sensitive areas, you are actually removing those peoples from these areas, right? So now the state government have to rehab them or replace those people from like, see, if you are declaring the eco-sensitive areas, you have to rehab those peoples also now, right? There are peoples involved in this areas, there are peoples that are living in those areas. So this will get adversely affected, and state government will have the responsibility to rehab them also, right? Next is people of the region have adopted agriculture and horticultural activities in an eco-friendly manner. Now, there are people living in those areas, obviously, right? If they are living in those areas, they are adopting such kind of methods to produce agricultural products, horticultural products, right? So if these peoples are producing agricultural products in those areas, and if you're declaring them, again, this will get hampered, right? The state government don't want them to just rehab, or don't want these things to decrease, right? The agriculture and horticultural activities will get hampered in those areas too by just declaring them, right? And next one is priority has been accorded for environment protection under the Forest Protection Act. This is not just Environment Protection Act, but you also have to consider Forest Protection Act, which is from 1980. Right. So this was all about this whole topic, right? And just remember that you only have to remember certain points. You have I always mention that you have to remember the keywords in this topic. If you are reading Kasturirangan committee report, you only have to remember the report recommendations, that how many percent, 37% is important to be declared as eco-sensitive areas. Now eco-sensitive areas is a keyword. Now what is eco-sensitive areas, right? What are the boundaries of eco-sensitive areas, right? So these kind of things are very important. Like there's also important that eco-sensitive areas are notified by which ministry or under which act. So these are factual things, and these are the keywords that you have to remember. So that's it about this topic. So again, thank you so much.